Dawn breaks over the snow-blanketed Ardennes forest on December 17, 1944, as SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Paper, the iron-fisted commander of Kampfgruppe Paper, stands defiant in the quaint Belgian town of Boulingen, orchestrating a desperate refueling operation with captured American gasoline pouring into his thirsty German panzers. A pivotal moment in the Battle of the Bulge that exposes the fatal flaws in Nazi Germany's crumbling logistics machine and seals their doom in World War II. This gripping tale of fuel shortages, missed opportunities, and industrial mismatch during Operation Wacht am Rhein isn't just a footnote in World War II history, it's a stark lesson in how superior American supply chains and relentless production overwhelmed the vaunted Wehrmacht, turning Hitler's last gasp offensive into a catastrophic failure that hastened the Third Reich's collapse. As we delve deep into why Germany lost the Battle of the Bulge, and ultimately the war, through the lens of Paper's spearhead unit, the Leibstandard SS Adolf Hitler, we'll uncover the infamous missed fuel depot at Stavelot, the harrowing prisoner exchanges, and the broader economic warfare that proved logistics, not just bravery, wins wars, all while exploring SO-rich keywords like Battle of the Bulge fuel crisis, Joachim Paper war crimes, and World War II American rations superiority, to illuminate this epic clash for history buffs and military strategy enthusiasts alike. The clock strikes 0800 hours on that fateful December morning in Boulingen, Belgium, a sleepy crossroads town thrust into the maelstrom of Hitler's audacious Ardennes offensive, where SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Paper surveys the scene with a mix of triumph and urgency, his men hastily siphoning American fuel from jerry cans into the gaping maws of their formidable panzers under the watchful eyes of captive U.S. soldiers pressed into service at gunpoint. Paper, a 29-year-old veteran of the Eastern Front whose ruthless efficiency had earned him both medals and infamy, led Kampfgruppe Paper, elite spearhead of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandard SS Adolf Hitler, comprising 800 battle-hardened troops, 117 tanks including fearsome Tigers and Panthers, and an arsenal of assault guns designed to punch through Allied lines like a blitzkrieg thunderbolt. His orders were crystal clear and brutally ambitious: slice through the thinly held American defenses in the Ardennes, race westward to seize the vital bridges over the Meuse River, and fracture the Allied front, isolating British and Canadian forces in the north while compelling the Americans to sue for peace or face annihilation. This was the core thrust of Operation Wacht am Rhein, Adolf Hitler's grandiose gamble launched just 30 hours earlier on December 16, 1944, the largest German assault in the West since the 1940 fall of France. Unleashing three armies totaling 250,000 men, 1,400 tanks, and a torrent of artillery in a bid to recapture the port of Antwerp, sever Allied supply lines, and force a negotiated armistice that could salvage the reeling Third Reich from inevitable defeat. Yet, lurking beneath this veneer of renewed aggression was an insidious Achilles heel: fuel shortages that plagued the Wehrmacht like a terminal disease, a direct consequence of Allied strategic bombing campaigns that had ravaged German oil refineries and transportation networks, leaving Hitler's vaunted panzer divisions gasping for the lifeblood of modern mechanized warfare. The German High Command, acutely aware of this vulnerability, had rationed a mere 5 million gallons of gasoline for the entire offensive, a figure that basic arithmetic revealed was woefully inadequate, as calculations indicated the panzers would devour at least twice that amount to claw their way to Antwerp through the rugged, forested terrain of the Ardennes. The planners' audacious workaround: seize American fuel depots en route, pilfering the enemy's abundant stockpiles to propel their advance, a strategy born of desperation rather than doctrine, hinging on the assumption that U.S. forces would retreat in disarray, leaving their vast supply dumps intact and undefended. Paper's divisional intelligence officer had furnished him with a meticulously annotated map pinpointing these lucrative targets, American fuel dumps. Ammunition caches, and supply nodes scattered across Belgium like ripe fruit waiting to be plucked, intelligence gleaned from reconnaissance, prisoner interrogations, and captured documents that painted a picture of Allied logistical opulence. Boulingen represented the first litmus test of this high-stakes gamble. Paper's Kampfgruppe had stormed the town at 0730 that morning, catching the Americans off guard and prompting a hasty withdrawal that abandoned everything in its wake, including an intact fuel depot brimming with 50,000 gallons of precious gasoline, enough to quench the thirst of his entire armored spearhead and sustain the westward surge. In a move blending efficiency with psychological warfare, Paper commanded the American prisoners of war, engineers and supply personnel, to pump their own nation's fuel into the invaders' tanks, a humiliating tableau that underscored the Germans' precarious dependency while allowing his exhausted troops, who had battled non-stop for 36 hours, a momentary respite, as the fuel flowed from American jerry cans, each holding 5 gallons, into the German panzers. Paper paced the depot with growing impatience, calculating the time lost, 10 cans per tank. Multiplied by 100 tanks, equating to 5,000 gallons that would demand hours to transfer, every tick of the clock granting the Americans precious moments to regroup and fortify their defenses. He had learned this bitter lesson on the unforgiving Eastern Front, where fuel famines in 1943 had immobilized entire divisions, forcing the abandonment of tanks and the overrun of positions not by Soviet might alone, but by the simple arithmetic of empty gas tanks rendering the world's finest armored vehicles into static pillboxes. Now, in the wintry Ardennes, the specter of logistical collapse loomed anew. German supply convoys were mired in colossal traffic jams on bombed-out roads, harried by relentless Allied fighter-bombers that turned daylight movements into suicide missions, ensuring that the promised fuel allocations remained stranded far behind the front lines. Without capturing American stockpiles, Paper's advance would grind to a halt, his panzers reduced to useless hulks of steel on treads, a fate that had befallen countless Wehrmacht units in the east. One of his trusted officers, Sturmbannführer Werner Pochk, misremembered in some accounts but confirmed as a key subordinate, approached with grim updates on the fuel crisis, noting that the Boulingen haul would barely carry them to Stavelot, the next mapped depot promising even greater bounty, but likely defended or demolished by retreating Americans aware of the Germans' dire needs. Paper, undeterred, strode through the captured depot, marveling at the cornucopia of American abundance. Crates of ammunition towering like fortresses. Medical kits brimming with sulfa drugs and morphine, winter clothing in pristine stacks, and rations organized with industrial precision, everything labeled, everything abundant, a testament to the United States logistical juggernaut that had transformed wartime supply from a haphazard art into a science of efficiency. Curiosity piqued, he plucked a small, brown, waterproof cardboard box from a pile, its label reading, K-Ration, meal, combat, individual, breakfast unit, a compact marvel weighing under a pound and designed for no-fuss consumption without cooking or field kitchens. Tearing it open, Paper revealed its treasures, a can of chopped ham and eggs, hard biscuits for sustenance, a chocolate bar for morale, for cigarettes to steady nerves, instant coffee with sugar tablets for alertness, chewing gum for digestion, a wooden spoon, matches, toilet paper, and even a diminutive can opener, every essential for a soldier's meal engineered for portability, longevity, and nutritional balance, stamped with a fresh manufacture date of October 1944, mere weeks before deployment to the front. As a seasoned commander who had led units since the 1940 French campaign, Paper couldn't help but contrast this with the German field rations, bulk shipments of hard bread, fatty meat substitutes, and ersatz coffee that demanded cumbersome field kitchens for preparation, their quality deteriorating since 1943 amid resource scarcities. leaving frontline troops scavenging or slaughtering horses for sustenance. His staff officer, perhaps the reliable adjutant like Gustav Knittel or another close aide, historical records vary, but the essence remains, joined him and sampled the ham and eggs cold, his expression betraying astonishment at the superior taste and quality, real meat, not the gristly substitutes doled out by the Wehrmacht, accompanied by genuine coffee, chocolate, and American cigarettes that evoked envy among the German ranks starved of such indulgences. Paper, ever the tactician, ran silent calculations. If each American soldier received 3 K-Rations daily, that equated to 3 balanced meals, with over 10 million U.S. troops mobilized worldwide by late 1944, this demanded a staggering 30 million meal boxes per day, or 900 million monthly, a feat requiring an industrial colossus of factories, supply chains, and transportation networks that Germany, despite its total war mobilization since 1939, could never rival. The K-ration wasn't merely food, it symbolized America's unchecked productive might, churning out 105 million units in 1944 alone, each calibrated to deliver 2,830 calories while incorporating luxuries that boosted morale, all waterproofed and compact for global distribution from secure homeland factories untouched by enemy bombs. In contrast, German armament industries strained under Allied air raids, prioritizing tanks and aircraft over sustenance, resulting in frontline shortages that sapped fighting spirit and operational endurance, as Sturmbannführer Werner Pochk, commander of the remnants of the 1st SS Panzer Battalion, approached with reports of his unit's dwindling fuel and ammunition after early losses. Paper directed him to plunder the captured stocks, American 75mm shells compatible with German guns, jerry cans for immediate refueling, and heaps of K-rations to stave off hunger, urging his men to eat heartily and pocket extras, for the road ahead promised uncertainty in a theater where supply lines stretched thin. Poch distributed the bounty, and Paper observed his veteran troops, survivors of France, Russia, and Normandy, devouring the American provisions with the relish of a banquet, their faces lighting up at the novelties that contrasted sharply with the meager, often absent German issuances, underscoring a morale-eroding disparity where even emergency field rations from the enemy felt like gourmet fare. By 09:30 hours, refueling concluded, and Paper barked orders for the column to mobilize, tanks leading the charge, half-tracks ferrying infantry, support vehicles trailing in a serpentine formation snaking kilometers through the misty Ardennes, his command vehicle positioned near the vanguard for swift decision-making on the 14-kilometer dash northwest to Stavelot, a journey that, on clear roads, might take 20 minutes but was fraught with mud-choked paths, fleeing refugees, wrecked vehicles, and sporadic American resistance demanding clearance of every village and inspection of every bridge for sabotage. Paper's intelligence map tantalized with promises of a major fuel depot at Stavelot, purportedly larger than Bullingen's Hall and critical for sustaining the blitz toward the Meuse, though its exact location remained vague, assumed to be conspicuous amid the town's infrastructure. The Kampfgruppe thundered into Stavelot by 1200 hours, a picturesque settlement bisected by the Amblev River with a sturdy stone bridge at its heart, where American defenders, elements of the 30th Infantry Division and attached units, had dug in with anti-tank guns, bazookas, and determination, unleashing a fierce barrage that halted Paper's lead panzers in a thunderous exchange of fire. The battle for Stavelot raged for 3 grueling hours, Paper's forces leveraging their heavy armor and infantry assaults to dislodge the Americans, who retreated across the river after a valiant stand, leaving the bridge miraculously intact despite failed demolition charges, a stroke of luck that averted disaster, as its destruction would have bottled up the entire German advance in the narrow valleys. Crossing into western Stavelot, Paper dispatched scouts to scour for the elusive depot, expecting vast storage tanks, guarded perimeters, and bustling activity befitting a major supply hub capable of fueling his panzers for days of relentless pushing. Hours ticked by in fruitless searches, reconnaissance teams combing outskirts, roads, and buildings yielding only paltry finds, scattered jerry cans north of town amounting to a few thousand gallons, mere drops in the ocean compared to the intelligence-promised bonanza that could have propelled the offensive onward. Frustration mounted as reports confirmed no trace of the depot, either a phantom of faulty intelligence or evacuated by prescient Americans who torched or relocated their stocks to deny the enemy sustenance. Paper, ever the decisive leader forged in the crucible of total war, weighed the risks, lingering invited American counterattacks and airstrikes once the fog lifted. While his current fuel reserves, bolstered by Boulingen, sufficed for a continued thrust toward the Meuse, prioritizing momentum over exhaustive hunts in a fluid battlefield. At 1,600 hours, the order rang out, advance westward, leaving Stavelot contested as American engineers stealthily reoccupied southern positions from overlooking hills, ensuring the town remained a thorn in German flanks. Unbeknownst to Paper, the depot he sought was no myth, it loomed just 800 feet north of his approach route, a colossal cache of 3,200,000 gallons of gasoline meticulously stacked in 5-gallon jerry cans along a 5-mile roadside stretch, depots number 2 and 3, part of the U.S. First Army's vast supply network near Stavelot and Spa. Holding enough fuel to refuel his Kampfgruppe multiple times over and potentially sustain the broader offensive, this oversight stemmed not from concealment. The cans sat in plain view, uncamouflaged and unguarded amid the chaos, but from Paper's preconceptions shaped by German logistical norms, expecting formalized depots with tanks, buildings, and infrastructure. He overlooked the American model's decentralized efficiency, where portable jerry cans enabled rapid distribution without fixed sites, ready for units to grab and go. Paper's column had rumbled past this treasure trove within 300 yards, eyes scanning for the familiar hallmarks of a proper depot, missing the unassuming stacks that embodied U.S. ingenuity in supply chain management. Post-war interrogations, including one by American historian Major Ken Heckler, revealed Paper's rueful admission. He had anticipated fuel piled in town squares like at Boulingen, assuming absence meant evacuation, a cultural blind spot that cost dearly in the fuel-starved Ardennes where every gallon dictated advance or stagnation. Had he seized this hoard, the implications ripple through history. Refueled panzers could have surged toward the Meuse, capturing bridges, fragmenting Allied lines, and prolonging the battle, perhaps altering the war's tempo if not its outcome, though American air superiority and reinforcements loomed as counterweights. Fast forward to December 21, 1944, in the besieged village of Stoumont, Belgium, where Major Hal McCown, commander of the 2nd Battalion, 119th Infantry Regiment, 30th Infantry Division, hunkers in a dank cellar amid the roar of encircling German tanks. His unit's valiant 3-day stand against Paper's onslaught crumbling under relentless pressure as fuel-deprived panzers tighten the noose. McCown's battalion, part of the patchwork American defenses that had blunted the German spearhead through dogged resistance and clever demolitions, now faced encirclement, radio chatter confirming breakthroughs to the south that isolated them in a pocket of defiance. At 1,430 hours, German infantry breached McCown's command post in a sharp skirmish. Claiming one American life before capturing the major and his staff, stripping them of weapons, documents, and valuables like watches and cigarettes in a ritual of conquest. Escorted to a battered stone house on Stoumont's edge, Paper's makeshift headquarters, its walls scarred by bullets and shrapnel, McCown confronted his captor, a tall, gaunt 29-year-old aristocrat with chiseled features and flawless English, who introduced himself with a veneer of professionalism amid the chaos of a stalled offensive. By this juncture, Paper's blitz had sputtered to a halt, out of fuel, low on ammunition, besieged by converging American forces, his once mighty Kampfgruppe reduced to a defensive huddle. No longer the tip of Hitler's arrow but a trapped beast awaiting the kill, that evening, in a surreal interlude amid the war's brutality, Paper and McCown conversed for 7 hours from 2300 to 0500 the next morning, seated before maps in a dimly lit room, the German expounding on Nazism's ideology, Germany's righteous struggle, and justifications for atrocities, while the American listened intently, later recalling Paper's magnetic intellect and unshakable conviction in victory despite the encirclement's grim reality. As a captive for 3 days within the German perimeter, McCown meticulously observed the enemy's plight, soldiers gaunt from exhaustion after 5 days of ceaseless combat. Many clad in pilfered American garb, knit caps, gloves, sweaters, overshoes, even overcoats, to combat the biting cold, a damning indictment of Wehrmacht logistics failing to furnish winter essentials. Morale teetered as rations dwindled, German issuances sporadic and subpar, forcing troops to subsist on captured U.S. provisions like K-Rations and C-Rations, which they unpacked with childlike wonder, savoring chocolate, coffee, and cigarettes absent from their own meager allotments. One soldier, brandishing a hand can, confided to McCown that such quality eclipsed anything from the Wehrmacht, where canned meat was fatty gristle demanding cooking and tasting foul, highlighting how American industrial precision delivered superior nutrition that bolstered endurance. Medical shortages painted a harrowing picture, aid stations barren of morphine or sulfa drugs, bandages recycled amid screams of agony during crude surgeries, amputations performed with patients conscious and restrained, biting leather straps in medieval torment, contrasting sharply with U.S. protocols offering pain relief, antibiotics, and sterile care that saved lives the Germans lost to infection and shock. On December 22, a Luftwaffe resupply attempt faltered spectacularly. 6 low-flying aircraft parachuted canisters intended for Paper's lines, but most drifted into American-held territory, German troops watching helplessly as vital supplies fell 200 yards beyond reach, a fiasco that underscored aerial inferiority and sealed their isolation. With 170 American prisoners, hundreds of wounded, and no evacuation means, Paper convened his officers on December 23, McCown present as an observer, debating dire options: advance impossible without fuel, defense untenable sans ammunition, vehicular retreat futile in empty tanks. The verdict: break out on foot at 0200 on December 24. Sabotaging vehicles to deny them to the enemy, leaving non-ambulatory wounded with scant American medical supplies, and releasing prisoners to lighten the load, a humiliating pivot for an elite armored unit now reduced to infantry evasion through snow-laden forests. McCown seized the chaos to escape on Christmas Day, rejoining American lines and filing a comprehensive after-action report detailing German vulnerabilities, supply breakdowns, morale cracks, equipment pilferage, and the irony of Wehrmacht reliance on U.S. rations for survival, intelligence that bolstered Allied countermeasures. Later, at the 1946 Malmedy massacre trial, McCown testified as a defense witness, affirming Paper's adherence to Geneva Conventions and his treatment while exposing the desperation bred by logistical collapse, not tactical inferiority, that doomed the Germans at Stoumont, where superior American sustainment turned the tide. Paper's abandonment of 7 Tiger II tanks at La Gleize, 50 medium panzers, 70 half-tracks, and 135 vehicles, intact but fuel-starved, served as monuments to this failure, later museum pieces symbolizing how empty tanks rendered even the mightiest weapons obsolete, Belgian civilians salvaging what the Germans discarded in their flight. Shifting to January 1945 in a French POW camp, General der Panzertruppe Assaut von Manchoufel, commander of the 5th Panzer Army during the Ardennes thrust, faces American interrogators with candid resignation. His career as a professional soldier, from Eastern Front exploits to opposing Hitler's quixotic plan, now fodder for historical dissection. Manchoufel, alongside Field Marshal Walter Model, had advocated a restrained offensive with achievable aims, decrying the Antwerp fantasy as logistically unfeasible given the paltry 5 million gallons allotted, a shortfall that arithmetic exposed as requiring double the volume for success, pinning hopes on capturing U.S. depots, a precarious foundation for strategy, vulnerable to destruction, mislocation, or defense, all of which materialized to cripple the advance. By December 19, his tank commanders clamored for fuel amid stalled convoys and insufficient captures, the offensive faltering as panzers idled, victims of a systemic collapse tracing back to 1943's eastern debacles were vast distances. Poor infrastructure, and Soviet sabotage outpaced German repairs. Manchoufel painted a bleak portrait of Wehrmacht logistics, reliant on hundreds of thousands of horses for supply wagons in an era of mechanized blitzkrieg, an anachronistic mismatch where tanks outran equine haulers by orders of magnitude, demanding 20 pounds of fodder daily per horse, 50 tons for a 5,000-horse division, clogging already congested roads with non-combat essentials. Horses succumbed to exhaustion, airstrikes, and malnutrition, their carcasses obstructing paths, while American forces deployed exclusively trucks, hundreds of thousands of standardized deuce-and-a-halfs and jeeps that idled without consumption, hauled heavier loads faster, and benefited from interchangeable parts and vast spares inventories. Allied bombing exacerbated the nightmare, pulverizing rail junctions, bridges, and roads, confining German movements to nocturnal slogs under constant threat from P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs that incinerated convoys, decimating fuel trucks and food transports beyond replacement rates as factories crumbled under raids, raw materials evaporated, and workers were drafted into cannon fodder. In stark contrast, Manchoufel envied American logistics, secure factories 3,000 miles from battlefields churning out material at unprecedented scales, transatlantic convoys flooding ports like Antwerp with tonnage dwarfing German capabilities. Redundant depots ensuring no single loss crippled operations, and standardized packaging accelerating distribution without specialized training. When pressed on Germany's defeat timeline, Manchoufel pinpointed 1943's Kursk debacle as the turning point, where tactical wins masked strategic insolvency, insufficient industry, oil, food, manpower, and time against America's boundless resources, rendering U.S. entry a death knell as production outpaced destruction. The Ardennes was Hitler's delusional Hail Mary, wagering reserves on willpower over material, a fallacy Manchoufel debunked. Logistics trumps valor, an army sans supplies is impotent. The offensive's toll, 600 tanks lost, 34,000 dead, 60,000 wounded or missing, eviscerated Germany's mobile might, paving the way for Allied Rhine crossings and Berlin's fall. Manchoufel's 309-page post-war manuscripts, B-151 and B-151A, offering unflinching analysis crediting U.S. sustainment while lambasting German frailties, a honesty rare among ex-generals who scapegoated Hitler or fate. In February 1946, amid Nuremberg's somber tribunals, SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich, the butcher-turned-general commanding the 6th SS Panzer Army, languishes in a cell, his meteoric rise from Hitler's bodyguard to army helm, a promotion Hermann Göring derided as beyond his divisional competence, now scrutinized in psychiatric interviews by Dr. Leon Goldensohn. Dietrich's quip, We call ourselves the 6th Panzer Army because we have only 6 panzers left, captured the gallows humor of a shattered force, its main thrust bogged in traffic, fuel droughts, and American tenacity, allocated gasoline for just 90 to 100 miles against Antwerp's 140-mile trek, explicitly dependent on enemy captures, a desperate ploy revealing logistical destitution. Dietrich deflected blame to air power, weather, and Hitler's overreach, sidestepping the core, supply failures that historians unanimously cite as the offensive's undoing, where fuel and ammo shortages halted advances, food deficits eroded stamina, and medical paucities amplified casualties. Contrasting American resilience through mature systems honed over 5 years, by April 1945, in a German interrogation center, Paper himself faces American probers, detailing his operations with stoic professionalism, soon to confront Malmedy war crimes but for now recounting the fuel saga, Boulingen's 50,000 gallons propelling to Stavelot, where the Phantom Depot eluded him, leading to Stumont's dry tanks and foot retreat. Shown maps revealing the 3 million gallon cache mere yards away, Paper's response, a shrug and wry, "I am sorry," belied the blunder's magnitude, rooted in mismatched expectations of depot aesthetics, a microcosm of German misapprehension of U.S. flexibility. This oversight, had it been rectified, might have fueled a deeper penetration, but American countermeasures, air drops at Bastogne, reinforcements at St. Vith, loomed inevitable, underscoring logistics primacy. The K-Ration, that humble box Paper examined, epitomized victory's architecture, 105 million produced in 1944, each a node in a global supply web from U.S. farms to foxholes, while German rations faltered, starving troops gaining weight in captivity. Vehicle stats amplified, 400,000 U.S. trucks versus 140,000 German, 63,000 tanks versus 46,000, 300,000 aircraft versus 120,000, American design simpler, German over-engineered and resource-hungry. German soldiers, scavenging U.S. gear, internalized defeat, their bravery no match for abundance. The bulges end in January 1945, with Germans retreating and Allies advancing, confirmed, logistics won World War II, America's economic engine grinding Nazi ambition to dust, a legacy enduring in military doctrine today.